All right. I am joined today by Jeff Lowe, Lauren Lowe, and James Garretson. This is a rare opportunity to get a chance to talk to other people in the cast of a show because I've spoken to Carole Baskin on this. And I do want to put it out that because I'm having different people on doesn't mean I'm endorsing anybody. I'm fairly neutral in this situation. And if anybody else watches this and they're very upset, they can always come on and yell at me or have their opinion expressed and shared. So, how are you guys doing?
Great.
We're doing good.
Doing great. Feels like an early Monday morning in Mexico.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm just going to go in hot and heavy. Everybody wants to know it. What has Tiger King done for your lives?
Good and bad. Good and bad. It's like, it really helped us in the beginning at the zoo when COVID hit. But then roles started to change as to what side the government was truly on and who was actually leading that role. And, that's what really started this whole stabbing people in the back kind of thing started occurring. And then it kind of rekindled obviously our relationship with James because things were not good during the whole court session because it seemed like even the government was trying to pull us all apart, including while filming Tiger King. And just I would say fairly recently, we all just kind of got back together and we're like, okay, we know who really started all this. Obviously, it was between Joe and Carole, and then the government. They try to ruin everyone's relationship. We all had the same motive, I guess, or we had the same thoughts and feelings towards everyone. So we just all got back together.
We had the same goal of protecting the animals.
Yeah.
That's what it was all about. It wasn't about Carole Baskin. James and I neither one give two flips about Carole Baskin. It was what we saw Joe doing to the animals. And I remember, James, a phone call that we had when we had this very conversation. We were in Vegas and you were talking about, it was when Joe put those 5 tigers down to make room for Trey's tigers that were coming in and he needed the Airbnb for Trey's tigers. And when he shot 5 of his own tigers to make that room just for $5,000 in rent that he was going to rent that cage for, that's when James and I said, "Fuck this." So when we said, "Screw this guy," we can't allow him to keep doing this. It was bad enough what he was doing to people. Then when he started or continued, I guess, to kill animals, I just said, "That's enough. I'm not going to be part of this."
Okay, so you and Carole Baskin might actually see eye to eye on that argument.
Carole and I probably see eye to eye on more things than people would think, but I don't believe in her methods and her ability to manipulate governmental agencies to do it. She's a 501c3 who takes in millions of dollars a year and then uses that money to lobby, which is a violation of the 501c3 guidelines. And with that money, she's able to buy influence. And we could do the same thing. We could go out and raise the money and buy influence, but then you're just paying politicians to limit and add more restrictions to people's lives.
Interesting. I'm going to go to James first on this, but from what I understand, a lot, if not all, of the editing team of Tiger King is actually deeply tied in with PETA. What are your thoughts on that? And would that have changed your opinion of involvement if you knew ahead of time?
Well, none of us really did our homework on Eric Goode and what he was about. That's the director of Tiger King. Mm-hmm. And definitely there was motives on the animal rights side. All the editors and producers are deeply in the animal rights community. And Eric Goode, the director, is basically the Carole Baskin of the turtle world because he has a turtle sanctuary that actually uses volunteers, unpaid labor. He has a ball every year. Like Carole has a ball called the Fur Ball It's a big dance that they raise money for her charity. Eric does the turtle ball. So they're basically one and the same people. And Eric Goode, he started playing us against each other, me and Jeff. Well, Eric would say, well, you know what Jeff said about you, and he would do the same thing to Jeff. They were playing us to get what they wanted. And then now me and Jeff and Lauren are left to clean up the disaster of a mess that they all left behind. The threats, the death threats, the constant slander. So that's where we're at today.
No, excellent. A follow up on that, and all of you, please jump in. I interviewed Javier Colon, who was in the show Outlast, and one of the things I'm particularly interested in, because I do human behavior and things of that sort, is the potential or possible manipulation by producers to, shall I say, trigger you or to push you so they can get a particular narrative out. With an example being testimonials, I guess, when you're one-on-one with the camera or two-on-one with the camera. Can you share what was going on, like what a producer might say to you and your response, etc.?
I can jump in with that. I know that they would very often put words in your mouth. Jeff, say this, say it with more gusto, say it with more.
Say it like this.
One of the things that got me so much flack from half the women in the world is when I said something about Lauren going back to a gym to get back in shape, that the nanny would allow her to go back to the gym and get in shape. And man, I got more shit from that. But those were that he told me to say that, and.
But there was more to that conversation.
Yeah,
it was
actually
a long conversation because I told him I wanted to go back to the gym after having the baby, and he just kind of repeated my words.
Well, Eric says, Jeff, say something like having the nanny around would allow Lauren to get back to the gym and get in shape.
Yeah.
So, and then Tiger King 2. I mean, there's a million instances, but Tiger King 2 specifically, when they took us to the Zaza Hotel in Dallas, where we were not supposed to be filmed because they don't but he didn't care. He wheeled in his equipment and started. They had so much equipment in that room, it was crazy. But they stuck us in bed. They had cameras over the bed, and I'll send you pictures. And he flew in a girlfriend of Lauren's from Las Vegas, and just to set up kind of like
he was trying to get us to say that we've slept with her and all this, and me and her just kept looking at each other, and we're like, we've never slept. She and I have never done anything together. She's one of my best friends, but it was just kind of.
But what he did is he sat there off camera and he talked about all the various drugs that he's used, and that his mother was being treated for depression on ecstasy, and to try to, he just tried to get us to admit to using narcotics, which we have. I mean, it's no secret now, but the fact that they, Eric Goode provided alcohol to a recovered alcoholic. He provided drugs to Alan Glover and alcohol to Alan Glover for interviews. He pulled out an 8-ball of cocaine at a strip club and tried to give it to Lauren. And so somebody who manipulates the situation and then vilifies you for it or villainizes you for it on screen, I think it's just a dirty trick. And it's the same way with, James said that you're responsible for this and you should be going to jail. I said, all right, well, fuck what James says, because I know better. He would just try to build this animosity between us all because he didn't want us all getting together and comparing notes, because then it would expose him for, trying to get us to talk about drugs. People who don't know these things that went on behind the scene, I think would be surprised to know how much of Tiger King was set up.
Yeah. He would have me read his text messages on camera from Jeff. They're private text messages. He would hand me the phone, read this. And it was Jeff and them were beefing, so he wanted to get me into the middle of that. And he was, here, read this. Read it all, and he was just a real dirtbag.
And this is Eric himself doing it wasn't just some production member talking to you or a camera person.
No.
Eric himself.
Eric himself. Rebecca Chaiklin came to our cabin one morning, and she said they were both in town filming, and she says, "My God, Eric is in such a bad mood lately. I don't know how to shake it." She goes, "Would you mind taking him to the strip club tonight and just try to get him to unwind?" So we talked about it.
We weren't planning to go.
Yeah, we weren't planning to go, but. I said, "Hey, let's run up to Oklahoma City and take Eric out." And we did. And as soon as we pulled into the parking lot, he pulled in with his SUV and 6 camera guys with their cameras. And I said, we weren't filming. And I said, they're not going to let you take cameras inside of a strip club anyway. So
I remember saying, "What the fuck is he doing?"
So he says, "Well, let me film you going up to the door." Okay, why? You just want to show that Lauren and I go to strip clubs. So we got in there, and we have a normal table where we go when we get in there. And a bunch of the girls came, sat down, and Eric starts hitting on every one of these girls. And he reaches into his wallet and has this bag of Coke and pulls it out and hands it. He starts to hand it to Lauren. I nudged her. I said, "Don't take it, don't take it, don't take it." Because I suspect they had hidden cameras on them.
I didn't know what it was when he was trying to hand it to me. He's like, "Here, Lauren," and I was like, "What is that?" And then that's when he nudged me.
Yeah,
but then the other stripper came over and she grabbed it and ran to the bathroom.
That's when the girls took it. And I said, "You know what? That's just him trying to John DeLorean us, to set us up into something that we normally would not have done, and just for the sake of making us look." He wanted us to be the criminals of the show, and he succeeded to some degree, but he got busted in a lot of the others.
Yeah, one time in Florida, we were working all day because we were shooting. Most of my stuff had my business in South Florida, so we were working all day and then shooting in between. He's like, "Man, you guys work your ass off all day. I want to take you guys to the strip bar. Is there one around here?" I said, "Yeah, there's one in Key West." So he took us down there, and he didn't have cameras or anything. But come to find out, he had all these hidden mics and stuff, and it ended up on one of the cuts on Tiger King when we're in a strip bar in Key West. And Florida is a 2-party consent state. We didn't know we were being recorded, and he just blatantly broke every law there is, and we ended up on TV in a strip bar. And it was supposed to be a good thing, but they were all wired up with cameras and mics and stuff, and he's just not an ethical guy at all.
Yeah, I understand. James, to continue, I understand that some of the hidden footage, or there were hidden cameras on you during season. Now, was this also in season 2?
A lot, yeah. When I'm in my store, he's got hidden cameras sometimes. When I'm at the strip bar, he's got hidden cameras. And Rebecca Chaiklin, she was even worse. See, I filmed with Rebecca Chaiklin and Eric Goode. I'd have them equal amount of times, and I would say things to one of them on a phone call, then they would send my phone transcripts to the other, and they were doing all kinds of underhanded stuff. And then when I called them out, I actually hired a lawyer, and after the first season, and we made an out-of-court settlement saying they wouldn't do it if I filmed with them again, and they still did it. When we had an agreement, I had to be showed in a good light and all this other stuff, and they still violated that. And a lot of people don't know that I went after them after the first season, and they settled out of court.
Oh, wow. Okay, Jeff, sorry, you had another story?
It was just showing the character. In Tiger King 2, they tried to make it look like I had scammed Joe Barth, this carny out of Beaufort, South Carolina. And I want to make it clear, I don't scam anybody. I don't scam anybody. But I will enforce agreements. If I agree to loan James $100,000 and under certain conditions, and those conditions aren't met, then the deal is off, and I pull back whatever I can. And if he gave me collateral, it's mine now. And the problem is when you're dealing with con men like Joe Exotic and Joe Barth, when you make these offers to them, you pretty much know they're not going to abide by it. And you collateralize yourself to protect yourself. And, I've done that all my life. I managed Robbie Knievel, ended up taking a lot of Robbie Knievel's stuff back because he died owing me $500,000. So that's not scamming. That's good business. And if a banks should be considered to be all scammers when they repossess your house for not paying for your house or your cars. But Eric Goode was such a criminal himself that he owns, you probably know Eric Goode's Wikipedia. He owns 12 or 15 major hotels and restaurants in New York City. He had one of the most perverted nightclubs in New York City called Area, where they would have bestiality themed nights. It was just furry nights, just really disturbing stuff. And Eric, during COVID, it came out Eric made a statement saying Jeff and Lauren are surviving on meager income, and I see a lot of animals dying. And he knew he had sold this thing to Netflix for $40 or $50 million. If he was really concerned about our animals, he would have said, Jeff, here, you guys are going to make us world famous. Here's $500,000 to make sure that the animals are okay. He didn't do that. But what he does is he goes back during COVID and he lays off all of his restaurant employees. And there's articles in the newspaper, you can verify it. Then he goes and he applies for PPP loans to the tune of north of $14 million that were all dismissed, all forgiven. So if he's laying off all of his employees and closing down his restaurants, how does he still qualify for $14 million in PPP loans? He already had just sold a building he paid $5 million for $60 million. So this is a guy who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars just milking the government teat unnecessarily. Just like Joe's lawyer, John Phillips, he's out buying $1.8 million beach houses. He went and bought Shaquille O'Neal's old Ferrari. At the same time, his company, John Phillips Law Office, is securing $500,000 in PPP loans. So these guys are the frauds. We're not the frauds. Lauren and I could have gone to the government and begged for $500,000 to feed tigers, but we didn't do it. We took it out of our own pockets. She did OnlyFans to help pay for the, $5,000 a week in food that we were spending to do.
Also to help build the other zoo too.
And to help build the other zoo, which was taken away from us. And that's another, someone will say you scammed a school teacher. Okay, well, the woman who bought the land for us was not a school teacher. She was an AT&T employee. I don't know where Joe gets school teacher nonsense from, but she was fully vested in the zoo. She had a portion of
She was a business partner.
Yeah, she was a business partner, and she understood the same risks that we took. We spent $500,000 or more in caging that we had to leave behind.
Yeah, she demanded all the caging stay, all the fencing, everything.
For people to label us as scammers, no. It's like that saying that you miss every shot that you don't take. And we take a lot of shots. I mean, we're ball hogs. We shoot every opportunity we get. And when you step out and do that much and make that many attempts to be successful, you're going to have more failures than the most people will. And it's just who we are. I mean, yeah.
Lauren, I'm sorry, it popped in my head, but I mean, are you being shamed about OnlyFans or anything like that because you were having to do it?
Well, you're saying having to do it. I don't have to do it. I want to do it. Huge difference. Like I enjoy who I am. I'm not ashamed of my body, and why not? I've had fun.
People under the impression that I to do this, low force. We get crap. And
Joe takes shots at Lauren all the time about OnlyFans, and it's okay for him to OnlyFans. I mean, who cares if Lauren's taking pictures of her body?
Sure,
that's her. It's her body. She can do whatever she wants to do. But Joe and his people take stabs, and I know Lauren. Lauren, you can't make her do anything. She's a redhead, So I don't think Jeff is the abuser. I think Lauren can handle her own.
The abuser.
And everybody says that Jeff beats her and stuff. Listen, that's all bull. It doesn't happen.
We've got a great relationship.
She would be my old ass.
I know redheads, no offense, Lauren, but most of them are crazy. I too am a redhead, and we have nasty tempers. It's just part of being a redhead. And, they make fun of her on that. Joe's making fun of people, but he's the one in prison. He's the one begging for honey buns. He's the one that has a boyfriend that's catfishing him. So,
Okay. Actually, on this note, getting back to the production, sometimes in the shows you're going to establish relationships with other people who are working there, camera people, whatever. Have any of you guys continue talking to crew or anybody involved with the productions?
Not with Eric Goode's production. No, none of us have talked to them because of what they did to us.
I mean, a lot of the other TV opportunities that we've had since, and the friendships we've made in the zoo. Zach Baggins.
We still talk to all of our old staff members too.
So our staff members. I mean, we communicate with the people who didn't screw us, and every once in a while we'll send a text to Jeremy McBride, who is Eric Goode's lapdog. Actually, he's his cleaner. When Eric won't take our calls, he won't answer our texts, and everything gets diverted to Jeremy McBride. And James is in contact with him more than we are. But, it's just sad that these guys will do this to you and they pack up and they go on to the next project. Now he's doing something called the Chimp Queen, where he's basically tricking, once again, kind people who've dedicated their lives to taking care of chimpanzees and monkeys, and he's tricking them into losing their livelihoods by getting them to interview in Chimp Queen.
How about you, James? Are you in touch?
Well, I'm not in touch. They won't answer my calls anymore, but I do wake up every day and send them a nasty text. I can read the last two, and you can kind of see where I stand. What happened?
Looks like they got cut off. Hopefully they can get back in. That's fine. We'll just keep recording.
Gotcha.
I've got questions that I could just ask you while
I'd like to answer that question when they're on here so they can kind of see my stance on when I do talk to them. It's not very friendly.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, you know what? Let me just go through some things on you.
Yeah.
Like, you were the ski king in season 1, or jet ski.
The jet ski king, yeah. Here, let me tell you how that started. So, during COVID, everybody was doing the jet ski memes and stuff, the fat guy on the jet ski, coming out of COVID like this or that. So they made a coloring book about me, and it said there was Tiger King, and it basically had this little kid drew it. He's like 6 years old. I sent him a little video for thanking him and stuff. But what he did is in a coloring book, and it said Tiger King, and it had me on a jet ski. So what he did is he crossed it out and he put Jet Ski King. So it all started with the little child saying the Jet Ski King, and then it just kind of, it was fun while it lasted. I mean, I got a lot of recognition being on a jet ski. People want to do photos, never financially, but just, I took probably, 40,000 photos probably back during the COVID era, because during COVID, I was still operating my business and it was really busy down in the Florida Keys. So I took so many photos. It was unreal.
Oh, that's cool. Did it help your business at all?
No, I've done jet skis since 2012, so I'm already established. I don't think it really helped my business. I mean, COVID helped my business because everything else was closed. But I don't think the Tiger King helped my business at all. I don't think anything good is coming out of the Tiger King for me, but a lot of harassment and years of death threats and rat emojis, and it hasn't been a good experience by any means.
Fair enough. Now, after season 1, there were rumors that you were working with Carole to get Joe out of the business. Did you ever actually work with her?
No, that me and Carole. Okay, if you go back to my history, I had animals in Florida. I've owned tigers. I was Carole's first target in 2006. Carole and her band of people came after me, and I acquired one of Carole's diaries that she made, and it it was from Carole, and she took responsibility for taking me out. I have a mutual hatred for Carole for what she did to me. Not that I want her killed or anything, but I wouldn't have lost any sleep if somebody did whack her, because she cost a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of headache. So I was her first target. So no, I did not work with Carole at all.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but season 1 and season 2, is that an accurate depiction of what happened? And if not, can we get a more accurate?
Well, it was probably actuality at the time. It was probably somewhat accurate, but when it was all over with, we started finding things that the directors were concealing, because we ended up with all that footage, same footage that the director had. And there was some raunchy stuff on those hard drives that he had access to also. There was a lot of allegations of underage boys. And he slid a lot of the interviews under the rug to not make Joe look so bad, because Eric Goode would always say, if that Lacey drive got out, Joe would be done. Well, that's where they got the footage to make Tiger King. The old Joe footage is off that Lacey drive. So they were concealing all the bad stuff because they wanted to pass that Big Cat Safety Act. And they had a lifetime contract with Joe, Eric Goode. So they thought Joe was going to get out. So they didn't want to put a big stain on their star. And that's what really happened.
Interesting. So good. We're getting into the hard drive. I've been hearing that there was a hard drive or hard drives or something plural, and I've seen a little bit that has been put up on Instagram. I'm not going to share it here because YouTube has standards and guidelines, and I'd like to keep this video going. But what I did see was an obviously underage boy with, it looked like a miniature alligator being used to bite his nipple or something like that while he's being held back and kind of, screaming, don't do this, don't do this. Would that be a fair depiction of what I saw?
Yeah, well, what happened, Joe had this party, and he had all these underage boys, and he would make jokes about, hey, let's show more of your legs, take your shirt off. I mean, why would you say those kind of things to these 14, 15-year-old boys? And there are a lot of allegations that are out there, and I think he did a lot of this stuff, and Eric Goode knew about all these allegations, and he just swept it all under the rug, because you got to think, when they were shooting Tiger King, they had extra video of J.C. Hartpence, a man that's in jail for murder and raping his stepdaughter. That was one of Joe's exes. They had all this footage. They had Brandon Wild, a guy that was basically taken advantage of from Joe. They didn't use that footage. They kept all this stuff under the rug to protect their star. And me and Jeff were basically the scapegoats. Well, me, Jeff, and Lauren were just the scapegoats. But
how did you learn about this drive? I mean, did you know about the existence of this all along, or how did you become aware?
That'd be Jeff.
Joe's big mouth, once again. Joe's mouth is always what's gotten him caught. And during his divorce proceeding with Dylan, it came out in an article online that Joe was deathly afraid that Dylan would release a sex tape. And we asked some of the old zoo employees, because Dylan and I don't speak, we asked some of the zoo employees if they knew of this, and they said, yeah, Joe has this hard drive where he would keep all of his sexual conquests, and it used to be up here in the gun safe, and then Joe took it back to the house and put it in a safe. So then we discovered that Eric Goode had that tape. Unbeknownst to Joe, when Joe got arrested, Eric Goode went to Dylan and apparently made him an offer to buy all of the hard drives that Joe was hiding in this safe and elsewhere. So apparently Dylan sold them all his content, and the word is that Eric Goode returned that hard drive to Dylan. He says, dude, he says, I can't use any of this. This would put Joe in prison for the rest of his life. And so once I discovered it was there, and then I discovered that copies were made, we put out a reward for the tape. And somebody came out of the woodwork with it.
And Joe needs to be punished for what he did too.
Yeah, there's so much stuff on there that could never be shown. And
have you shared it?
We actually we had to bring the copy to Mexico, just to keep it in safe keeps. And we
okay. Okay. Well, it's very important to note this. Have you shared it with the FBI or law enforcement?
James and I both have been in communications with the FBI regarding the tape.
Okay, I just want this to be out there because if there's criminal activity and you're not sharing it, so I'm glad to hear that. It's kind of important.
See, we're not sure if
our purpose of buying. Yeah.
And we're also not sure if Eric Goode burned a copy for the Fish and Wildlife agent Matt Bryant, because Eric Goode and Matt Bryant were sharing information back and forth. You know, Eric's real, like, if anybody's a con man, it's him, because he can con people out of basically anything. But back to our question where you asked me, do I talk to Eric Goode or Jeremy McBride?
Or anybody in the production?
No, they stopped talking to me about a month ago when I demanded that they enforce their non-disclosure agreement with Eric Goode and with John Phillips. And they basically told me, we don't want to spend the money on lawyers. I said, so me and Jeff and Lauren have to get harassed all day? Then all phone calls stopped. They quit taking my calls. So I wake up every morning, because if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to sue it, Jeremy McBride and Eric Goode. But here's a text I sent to, I just want to read this short text. This is a text I sent to Jeremy McBride this morning at 8:39 a.m. I said, please have your boss sue me, because I went to his Turtle page and I wrote a bunch of stuff on his Turtle page trying to get a reaction out of him. I did do that. I do it daily. But I said, have your boss sue me, because I'm dying to get in a deposition with Eric Goode so I can ask him the questions about the Lacey drive. So I am trying to get them to sue me. So we can
discovery.
So for discovery, I want them to sue me. I'm going to keep on firing them up until they sue me. And then I said at 10:23, I said, wow, Jeremy, you play real nice till you get what you want. Then you shove the daggers in our backs. Because when we got done with Eric, because when Eric Goode would push, and I could probably speak for Jeff too, but when Eric Goode would push us to the limit, we'd be like, no more, I don't want to film, I'm done. Then Jeremy would call us, Eric, sorry, can y'all finish? Can you please come back? He'll make it worth your while. And then Eric Goode would say, I'm going to bring y'all some money. And he would never show up with the money. He would lie. He would basically get a call, walk off, jump in his car, and haul ass. The last time I seen Eric Goode, that's what he did. I got busy with a customer. He ran to his car, jumped in. He was going to give me $5,000. He ran to his car and just took off, and haven't spoke to him or seen him since. But I am going to stir them up until they give us 3 or 4 years of our lives back, because I think that's what they took from us.
Another name just came up while you're talking, John Phillips, and I think you've mentioned him a few times. Who is John Phillips, and what is his relationship with all of you?
You want to do that,
Jeff? John Phillips is Joe Exotic's attorney. John Phillips was originally hired by Don Lewis's family, and his method of putting everything out on social media wasn't conducive to Don's family's wishes, so they fired him. And Rebecca Chaikin, the producer, went to Joe and tried to get Joe to hire John Phillips. John Phillips is a slip and fall attorney, out of Jacksonville. He's not a criminal attorney, But she convinced Joe that this guy would do it for free and he'll get you out by Christmas of 2021, which is what he promised Joe. And, here we sit years later. But when the feds turned on us and came in with 47 armed marshals with ARs and night vision goggles when they raided our park because of the bogus allegations we were mistreating our animals. It was lost my train of thought.
When they came to raid, that the feds.
Since my stroke, I do this often. They took all of our stuff, so I immediately responded to a text message that John Phillips had sent me, and I said, if you're interested in these recordings that I have of the investigation of Joe, because she records everything. I mean, everything. And we had a lot of recordings that kind of put the government in a bad light. And it contained information about things that they might have concealed from Joe's defense attorneys. Not necessarily exculpatory recordings, but just kind of showing that they stepped over the line. So Phillips is like, okay, we've got 47 armed guards outside our house. And I said, I don't know if they're going to let me leave. And he says, have you been charged with anything? I said, no, they just had a warrant here to seize our animals. So he says, put all this stuff in a car and get to the airport. He says, I'll buy you tickets. They'll be there when you get there. So we flew to Jacksonville. We took all this stuff down under the condition that John Phillips would now go after, and we've got the text messages and emails. He was going to file a RICO suit against the DOJ, Carole Baskin, PETA, and Eric Goode for conspiring together to create this story to take our animals and our business. So we got down there, we provided him what he needed, and then because in order to do this, John Phillips had to get a waiver of conflict notice from both sides, from Joe and myself, because now we were at one time opposing, and now we're going to be collectively going after someone together. Phillips had to get this waiver of conflict, and I've got the text message where Joe says he's cool with it. There'll be a 60-40 split on damages, and we proceeded. Well, at some point, Joe kept running his mouth. Just like I said earlier, Joe's mouth is always what gets him in trouble. He just wouldn't shut up about the human trafficking allegations against us, or selling cubs and tiger hides in Las Vegas, which absolutely never happened. The feds looked into his allegations, and they said it's just all Joe's lies again. So at some point, I told Phillips, I said, you need to put a chain on this monkey, because I'm not going to work to help him get out at the same time have to deal with his abuse and his lies online. So he says, well, it's not even Joe doing it, it's his people. And I said, I don't care who it is. I said, it's coming from Joe's account.
And you have control of all these other people,
and
too. Yeah,
you control these people, because Joe could change the password of his account and it'd be over. But they didn't do that. They continued to slam us. So I've got the text messages that said, Phillips, delete everything, because he had our whole lives. I mean, he had several phones, videos of her nude, her OnlyFans stuff, and he promised me, he says, the only things that will be used are the things regarding government cover-up. And he says, the rest of this stuff will be in my safe, locked away. Anytime you tell me to delete it, it's deleted. So several times, the following November, I said, all right, I'm done with this stuff. Just delete it. Please delete everything. Can't help this guy. I want no part of it. And he goes, okay. He didn't delete it, because then he started a vengeance.
He started posting my OnlyFans stuff free online.
Yeah, he took
John Phillips or Joe Exotic?
Yes,
No,
John Phillips.
John
Phillips
started
uploading it,
stuff.
and the reason we knew it is because we Googled Lauren Lowe OnlyFans leaked, and guess what came up? A search hit that showed John Phillips uploading one of the videos that he wanted to have about the government corruption, At the same time, the IP was logged into logged into Pornhub, which is where he had uploaded her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever
so I want to clarify this. So this is, you gave him evidence as your attorney. So he's working for you as your attorney at this time.
We have a retention agreement.
Find that retention agreement.
It's right here. She'll get it. And he then started. You can go look at his stuff online. It's all just nonsense. And then he started creating recordings. Jeff and Lauren admit to things that we've never done, never admitted to. John has his own in-house production crew that creates videos for the ball game marquees when you go to the ball game and they run these videos. And that's what this guy does not 24 hours, but 40 hours a week, is he creates video and the montages for John Phillips. Anyway, this hit showed, and what are the chances
his name
in
was
the entire world that you'd be searching Lauren Lowe leaked OnlyFans and the search pops up with John Phillips' name and another thing that he had uploaded? And there's just the chances, the improbable chances, it's impossible.
Okay, just to clarify then, so somebody uploaded the content as his name, but we can't say for sure if it was in fact him who uploaded it. But he had the
within
material.
his office. And here's the other reason we know, is whenever she uploads something to OnlyFans and it's posted, it's watermarked. And it has the OnlyFans banner on it. The only way something would be leaked up onto YouTube without that banner is if someone else did it besides us. Us and John Phillips are the only three people in the world with that raw content. So we didn't do it because she's in the business of making money doing it. She's not going to upload it for free. So it had to be John Phillips. It's the only, there's no way that video went up online unwatermarked if John Phillips or his people didn't do it.
Have you filed a bar complaint, either of you, on this situation?
He's filed 9. I filed 9. James, I think, has 2. And then there's been like 2 other people that have filed bar complaints against him.
Have you gotten any response or any recourse?
He's a member of the Florida Bar, obviously, and he does a lot of speaking engagements for them. We didn't expect much out of the Florida Bar, and the Florida Bar took it to the second phase, which is rare in and of itself because it shows merit. They didn't just dismiss it, on the onset, but they eventually just dismissed it. So there just wasn't enough evidence. We sent evidence. John Phillips provided me with cocaine in his office at his office party, and if a Florida attorney providing illegal illicit drugs to somebody in his office isn't a violation of the Florida Bar, I don't know what is. But I did cocaine off of his desk. And if I'm lying, he can sue me. But he knows that there were 4 other witnesses there. So everything that we've accused John Phillips of doing would be an easy slam dunk win for him in a defamation lawsuit if it wasn't true. But the reason that he won't sue us is because he could not survive depositions with what we know.
Well, there's the other problem of the attorney-client privilege.
Exactly.
And I'm going to point out, this is something I've learned recently. Because you were the clients, you can say anything you want, but he is bound by law and constrained in what he is legally allowed to say. So that could be a factor too.
Here's our representation agreement.
That's all signed.
He says, no, those aren't real because they asked for them. Okay.
No.
If I went and asked a police officer for a police report of somebody who just got pulled over, he's not going to give it to me. If we did ask for that, which I don't remember we did.
Why would you send it to us?
Why would you provide it to us? If you weren't, and then all these emails where he was filing motions in federal court on our behalf, or he was having his attorneys in-house draft the motions that were being filed. So, he just lies and lies and lies and lies. And he cannot afford to lose this Joe Exotic case. He said it to me. His wife said it to us that it would just be. He was so convinced he could get Joe out, and that he promised Joe he'd be out by December of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are, 2 years later, and Joe's still locked up.
So basically, he did the same thing to me with the Tiger Tales videos. So we were down there filming in the Keys one day. Me, Rebecca Chaiklin, and John Phillips showed up. Because at one time we were going to help Joe because, whatever. But it all changed when I saw that drive. But John Phillips, basically, we were going to film with his phone. So Rebecca said, go get the phones. Let's film with them. So I sent my kid's mother to get the phones from my house. And she came back with the phones. I was out on a jet ski tour because we were working the whole time we were filming. When I got back, I said, where are the phones? Because Rebecca's asking me where the phones are. She said, I gave it to that guy with Netflix. And that was John Phillips. John Phillips basically told her that he was with the production team. She didn't know who John Phillips was. Grabbed my phones and leaves. Text Jeff, oh, well, I hope I don't get turned around. I don't want to run back into James. He took these phones, took them to a digital whatever to recover the data. They were both waterlogged, so they wouldn't turn on. So he took them to some data person, took all the data off of them, promised us he would never use it unless it was regarding Joe's case. Then one day I have a whole slew of videos on Tiger Tales, his little online Bash the Witnesses platform. And he did the same thing to me. I filed a bar complaint in Florida. They didn't even acknowledge the complaint. So I'm drafting more complaints, and I'm going to send them overnight registered mail, and I'm going to follow through with them. But I'm in the process of doing that over again.
Interesting. Now, I forgot. I think Lauren, are you the one who records everything?
I record a lot, yeah.
Did you record anything odd in the production, or maybe something that could have been represented one way, but you actually have recording that says, no, that's not quite right?
Yes. The suitcase.
I don't know. I was about to bring that up.
Just had to remind you. I'd be remiss if I didn't.
Couldn't remind me ever. Anyways, yes. This one I actually did not record. Jeff's son recorded it and then gave it to us later. But apparently we called Eric Goode out because on season 1, there was a tiger inside of a suitcase supposedly being rolled through the hotel. Well, that's what everybody blames us for. We've never done that. We actually had like a pet carrier, a really nice pet carrier, and we take the cats with us anywhere and everywhere we go because they needed to be bottle fed. Well, they showed a tiger in a suitcase on season 1, and we straight up asked Eric, we're like, where did you get that tiger? Because that wasn't ours. We had nothing to do with that, and he would not tell us anything. So he obviously had us look bad, like we weren't taking care of our animals.
Yeah, but I called him out on it while my son is filming. And I said, oh, by the way, Eric, I said, during Tiger King, why didn't you guys ever put up recreation for dramatic effect?
Lauren and I didn't sell cubs, and that was another one of the big misconceptions. And one of the other things that I'll bring up, the recreation of us pulling, will you please let people know, that was not us pulling cubs into a casino in a suitcase. That was creative freedom on the producers.
And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, you know damn well we didn't wheel a tiger into a hotel.
In a suitcase.
In a suitcase. And yet you put a tiger in a suitcase and wheeled him someplace on marble floor, looked like a casino. And he goes, fair enough, fair enough.
We didn't do that.
By the way, whose tiger was that?
Yeah, whose tiger did you use? It wasn't ours.
Uh-huh.
But anyway.
Good point.
It wasn't ours. And it could have said dramatic recreation. Didn't. I'll see you later.
That was... we did not put tigers in a suitcase. We didn't do that.
Here's what, Joe can claim.
That's fair.
Joe can claim it. Anybody, Doc can claim it. Carole can claim it. Brittany Pete can claim it. We didn't sell cubs because Lauren and I hadn't been back into this long enough at the onset of Tiger King to even have cubs to sell. And I said, if those gotcha tricks during production did nothing but made us look dirty. And, we love those animals. I've spent more damn money keeping animals healthy and alive than 99% of the people on earth, I promise you. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in veterinary bills we spent, and we have those bills. And that's the reason that after the DOJ threatened to charge us with animal neglect and cruelty and lack of veterinary care, they didn't seek the information, the exonerating information first. They just went in and took our animals. And then it was up to us to provide afterwards, prove that we weren't guilty. And once we gave it all to them, you notice that we're sitting here and we can come and go. We were in Dallas last week with James. They dropped all charges and they were going to go after us for the cost of that raid, which had to have been $500,000, and dropped that as well. So
interesting.
Everything, but who reports that? Nobody reports that. Everybody reports Jeff and those animals are being, Jeff's animals are being seized for this and for that. But nobody comes back, and TMZ didn't go back and say
everything was dropped.
Everything's dropped because of lack of evidence, or But that's what we deal with now because of what Eric Goode and ultimately Joe Exotic is to blame, because Joe's the one who caused this whole fiasco with his criminal activity. James and I tried to expose not to the world. We were only trying to expose it to the federal government, who Joe was in violation of their laws. And we made the same comment last week to somebody that if Lauren and I or James knew where Don Lewis's body was today, but we concealed that from everybody, people would think we were aiding and abetting criminal activity, or that we were wrong by not telling Carole. That's exactly what we did with Joe. We knew where the tiger bodies were. We knew that he had killed 100 more prior to that. Those 5 were nothing. Joe and John Renke, the guy with no legs, they would just as soon shoot a tiger in the head than to send him to a vet to have his teeth repaired.
Well, remember what Eric Cowie said? Because before Eric Cowie passed away, he told me the names of the 5 tigers. And of course, one of the tigers was ours that Joe killed. Well, one of the tiger's names was Lauren. And he said that he wanted to shoot that tiger just because it had the same name as me.
Yeah, he said those were old,
wow.
decrepit tigers. And one of them was only 3 years old.
Actually, they were only 2 years old and younger. That's all they were.
So when the federal government dug them up, they just took the heads, which I don't know why they didn't take the whole bodies. They probably should have. But the tigers had claws. We were there. I've got the videos. Their argument was Joe's veterinary protocol that was signed out by his vet gave him permission to euthanize tigers by gunshot. And it didn't. I just published it was signed off, and it says IV euthanasia. It doesn't say anything about shooting him with a gun.
Wow, that's disturbing. So I'm just gonna ask some rapid fire questions, that way we can just get a straight an answer from you on it. I'm not charging or anything else, but Joe claims that you stole the zoo from him. Is that true?
No. No.
Lauren and I were living in that 13,000 square foot mansion, and he came to me. One of his video messages, he's in front of my house and claims that it's his second house mansion in Colorado. He begged us. He showed us pictures of him after a facelift gone bad, and he looked like he was going to die that day. And he says, "I've got HIV, and I need someone with smart business sense to come run my zoo." So Lauren and I, we were already about to buy a zoo that was right down the street from this big house. And Joe said, "I want to come out there and inspect it to see if it would even pass licensing." So I said, I flew him and his husband Travis out and let him stay in the mansion and took him skydiving. And he says, he pulled out that picture and he says, "Will you come look at my place?" He says, "Because I'm going to be dead, and I'll put you on my life insurance that would help continue to pay for my animals for the rest of their lives." So we went there and we looked at it, and it was a mess. Tigers were skinny. The electricity was either off or about to be cut off.
Turned off. You just got that notice.
We just found the note the other day in Joe's
Lacey Drive, where he kept a record of what we had paid for, and it was crazy. I mean, $25,000 for this lawyer, $15,000 for this lawyer.
Actually, I wrote a $49,000 check for a lawyer.
Yeah, $49,000 to a lawyer, and then every week we were buying $5,000 worth of food for his cast. So if that's how I stole the zoo from him, then so be it. I mean, people can say whatever they want, but he put me on the deed with his mother. Joe wasn't on the deed. Joe's never owned that zoo. Joe always put someone in front of him, so if somebody was attacked and killed, Joe doesn't go to jail for negligence. Someone else would. But if I stole the zoo, I stole the zoo. But if by stealing it, I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of bills, and so be it.
On that same note, Carole took possession of the zoo, although you owned it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are you going to go after her legally, or the judge who awarded it, or what's the story on that?
It's very confusing as to how the judge just gave her land that you can't just give somebody land from somebody else that they own. It just doesn't.
We've been told by
Makes
two
sense.
real estate lawyers. He says, you guys still own that property. And I said, no, the judge took it. He goes, the judge can't take it. He says, in Oklahoma, the law states that I must sign that zoo over, and we never signed anything. I mean, we did not sign that deed over. And this guy says, you own that property. He said, I've checked. And he says, a judge can't do, because see what happened is Joe put us on the property to encourage us to come invest in the property. And that was our collateral. Once again, I told you, I collateralized my loans. So when Joe started breaking all these laws and he knew that James and I were recording it, Joe decided he wanted to bail. And he calls PETA and he starts telling PETA that James and I are mistreating our animals. And he's just trying to set us up. When Lauren and I went to Las Vegas, he called the Clark County Animal Control, told them what our address was, and we were selling complete bull, but he just tried to inflict all this damage behind the scene before we ever even were really.
He wanted us out of the picture so that way he can have full control over the zoo again.
Yeah.
And it was just.
I mean, he was about to lose the zoo anyway. Carole was just months away from taking it anyway, so Joe would have.
Yeah, she didn't take it from you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, one more thing. In season 2,
yeah.
I was going to say, in season 2, that there was supposedly a plot with a piano wire to behead Joe Exotic, etc. James, okay.
Yeah, I got this one. Okay, so Rebecca Chaiklin called me one day. They were going to go film with Alan Glover. And she was like, he's leading us on a wild goose chase. We walked all over this property looking for a piece of barbed wire. And you got to think that property used to be a horse farm. So obviously you're going to dig. You mean you're going to find barbed wire somewhere out in the middle of Oklahoma. So what happened is this was brought on by John Phillips and Alan Glover. I was at the zoo. I never heard of such a plot. I was there. I was wired up. Everything was recorded. Not one time in the investigation was there ever a plot, or any of the feds asked me about a plot to kill Joe. But Rebecca, the Tiger King director, the other director, told me it was all bullshit, but they needed to finish the film and they were going to run with it because they had a timeline. Netflix was on their ass. They had to get something out. They had to have some kind of ending. So that was a little ending that Phillips and all them came up with. It never happened. Joe never rode his four-wheeler on the other side of the fence. It's all treed. The trees are within like 4 or 5 foot apart. There's no path there to get a four-wheeler through. He went up and down the gravel, and it was all made up. And Alan Glover is in hiding. He's not credible, and that was all BS.
And then we find out that John Phillips had offered, well, to begin with, the the Joe Exotic impersonator and Alan Glover are friends. The Joe Exotic impersonator kind of befriended Alan to help him because Alan has got a third grade education. He really needs adult supervision. Mm-hmm. So he followed Alan to Beaufort, South Carolina, where they did Alan's scenes with Rebecca Chaiklin. And he says that twice they handed Alan Glover envelopes full of cash and drugs. She provided him with drugs, according to Alan and this impersonator. So then we find out later that John Phillips, in order to get Alan to change his testimony for the swimming pool repairs to his father's swimming pool, which was in excess of $10,000. So, it's everybody was paying everybody to, James was offered money to change his testimony by John Phillips. And John Phillips offered us, John Phillips offered us legal representation to help. And then they say we lied, we perjured ourselves. No, you can look at our affidavits. We did not perjure ourselves one iota. We just clarified, that the government had possibly committed some Brady violations, but nothing was changed in our testimony. I didn't even testify in court, so Joe can't say I perjured myself because I never even testified.
And I couldn't. All my stuff was recorded. The feds have everything that I ever did recorded between me and Joe, so there's no way I could have perjured myself. But also a good person to probably bring on the podcast would be the Joe and Exotic impersonator, Bradley Weldon. He was also Carole's process server, so the plot thickens, and he was the one delivering all the lawsuits to the park. And then when this thing came out, he's like, I could pretend I'm Joe Exotic. And he made a lot more money than Joe impersonating Joe out there on the strip in Las Vegas.
That's some kind of irony.
And he was also attacked by Phillips too.
Wow. I'll definitely be very interested in talking. I do have one question because I didn't realize it, but Joe Exotic is on Twitter and he was tweeting about you guys, specifically you, Lauren and Jeff, overnight, it appears. How is Joe Exotic tweeting from prison? Help me out.
Well, for one thing, Joe's on his third burner phone. He keeps the federal government, the BOP, keeps catching him with burner phones, which is supposed to be a 2-year felony and up to a year in segregated housing. And for some reason, they continue to ignore the fact that Joe is still harassing and breaking federal law with a burner phone. Another instance, John Phillips, if you look at John Phillips' video where he says, Jeff and Joe have a heartfelt conversation for the first time in 2 years. Office, he says, do you want to talk to Joe? And I said, I'll talk to him if you want. So the phone rings in John's office, and it's from a prison. You can tell it's from a prison phone. Will you accept the charges? He accepts it, and Joe says, give me 5 minutes, and I'll call you back from another phone. So he hangs up, and John's phone rings again, and it's Joe on a burner phone.
Because it wasn't the federal recording that pops up saying this call is being recorded by the federal jail.
If you actually talk to Joe on a legitimate prison phone, it'll pop up every 15 minutes or 12 minutes, and it'll say this call is monitored by the Bureau of Prisons. Okay, well, we spoke to him for 40 minutes in that phone, unedited, single interruption from the government's ID tag or watermark.
And the reason was because he didn't have permission to talk to us through the prison phone.
Joe
so
cannot
he has to use a burner phone.
Joe cannot have third-party communication. In other words, he can speak to his lawyer, but if someone else, if Shaquille O'Neal's in the room, Joe cannot communicate with Shaquille O'Neal because Shaq's name is not on his approved list of contacts. So John Phillips, an attorney in the state of Florida, just aided and abetted Joe Exotic in using illegal phone to complete a 40-minute illegal telephone conversation. And we reported that to the BOP. We sent him to the Florida bar. We sent him the audio recording link. We sent him, the pictures and recordings that we had that Phillips didn't know we were recording in the office, the phone call at the same time. So how the bar keeps just ignoring Phillips' corruption. And, Joe was dealing drugs inside of prison, and his attorneys were sending out the drug payments on behalf of Joe out of his IOLTA account. So it's just so many corrupt things that his attorney has done that are just being ignored, and we're the criminals. It's just amazing. But how does he have Twitter? He either does it himself, or he has his
Goonies.
Yeah, his Goonies at the moment, because Joe's gone through so many Goonies, and they come and go, and he pisses them off. And so he has two women out there. I don't know. James,
Somebody's phone is pinging it like crazy.
Yeah,
I can feel that.
Because he just took it off.
So
Joe Exotic. I'm guilty.
he has these two ladies, bored housewives. I guess both their husbands left them. Whatever. Tammy Springer, his power of attorney. She's a diehard Joe fan. I mean, she'd probably go to the grave with Joe. And a lady down in Alabama right now, her name's Amy Filati. Her husband left her. So they stay on his pages all day, and they basically have weaponized his pages. Well, let's go attack James and Jeff all day and try to incite riots and stuff. And that's what they do. I mean, we're just constantly attacked. And Joe's selling interviews from jail. He's not supposed to benefit from being in jail. He's got a big ad out, $400 podcast. I'll go on the podcast for $400 or take a personal call for $400. He's in there thinking he's Al Capone in jail. And he's basically running the Maldonado crime family is what I call it.
Wow. Well,
and he publicly just stated that Joe's had cancer for 27 years. He's the most cancer-resistant human on earth, because he's been claiming it for decades.
He's a walking cancer cell.
Yeah, yet he's 50 pounds heavier than he was when he went in jail, and he claims that he's doing 200 push-ups and 300 jumping jacks, and that he's going to refuse any more medical. That's the case. The federal government needs to move him out of a cushy medical facility in Fort Worth and put him back into a real prison, because it's costing taxpayers twice per day to keep Joe incarcerated because he's in a medical facility than it would be if he was in just a regular prison where he belongs.
Interesting. Now, with everything that we've discussed, hard drives, everything else, what are you guys planning to do with this? And I'll go to James.
Well, we want to. I'm sorry. We want to tell the true story. We want, Netflix. I don't know if they want to just keep on hiding all this garbage that they put out there. And, we want to tell the truth. We want the real Joe to be exposed. We want to tell how the real story about how we've been done wrong. And our lives are constant bullshit because we have to deal with these people attacking us night and day. I mean, 3:00 in the morning, they're attacking us. I wake up every day with, oh, did you see what they wrote about you now? Or did you see what they text about you now? I wake up every day to just drama. And this guy's supposed to be in prison away from the system. And they're letting him do whatever he wants in there.
Is there going to be another Tiger King?
If we can pull it off, there will be.
How are you planning to do that if Eric and Rebecca have ownership of the name, or would this be something different?
It doesn't even have to be Tiger King. We don't want Eric and Rebecca involved. I mean, we want this documentary to be a little bit about them too, because they need to be exposed, because they're doing the same thing they did to us right now to the monkey side of the world. I was talking to a lady where they're filming this chimp show about this lady that lost her chimp, that had the chimp in hiding. I talked to her last week, and he used the same verbiage he used on me on this lady, and he's trying to destroy the primate industry. So him and Carole can monopolize everything. Eric Goode is the only reptile breeder and seller. Carole Baskin controls the big cats. I mean, it's all a motive to take out the private ownership.
And we have spoken. I've been on the phone with Netflix, with the head of documentary programming, and he's the guy who has the final say over greenlighting a project. And he said absolutely thrilled. He would be thrilled to help us produce something to follow up and to end this story. So
I want to show you this. So I basically disputed all John Phillips's videos, and YouTube is finally they find them inappropriate. So YouTube is actually starting to take them down because they violate our privacy rights. But why do I have to sit here and complain all day and live a miserable life because Joe made bad choices? Joe's in prison. Me and Jeff are not. Why do we have to deal with this stuff constantly? That's my problem with the whole thing.
Has anybody ever seen an attorney who brags about how good he is? He claims he's self-proclaimed himself to be the best attorney in America.
By his own newspaper.
By a publication he owns. How does it make any sense that you put every recording that Lauren had on her phone, whether it had anything to do with Joe Exotic or not, he put up on YouTube? And he just, Jeff Lowe was on TV 27 years ago on American Trucker, and he posts the video and says he just wants to be on TV no matter what. As John Phillips goes on all these stupid game shows and Judge Judy and Storage Wars, and he's just everything that Joe and John accuse us of is just to shelter the fact that they're doing it actively themselves. And it just gets frustrating because
one video removed out of 54. 54 videos. And I don't know.
Wow. Now, okay, to wrap things up, what is the one question that you've been waiting to be asked that I didn't ask you? I'll start with whoever wants to go first. Lauren, definitely get in on this because you're the quietest of the lot. What is the one question that I should have asked you that you've been waiting to hear?
Would we do it again?
That's a good one. Would you?
Negative.
I think I'd do it differently, though. I mean,
we wouldn't.
I don't know. How far back do you want to redo it? I mean, do you still want to take over the zoo? I think so.
Yeah, I think we still would have gone. We still would have gone and taken over the zoo because of the animals. When Eric Goode came to me and introduced himself, he came to the park looking to continue filming with Joe, and Joe wasn't there. Joe had absconded and was already on the run. And when Eric Goode came and introduced himself and asked if we wanted to interview, I probably would have said no. If in hindsight, that would have ended Tiger King with Joe on the run from the authorities. There wouldn't have been anything forward from that point. So it would have left us out of it completely. James and our involvement would have been left out, and it would have been just Joe abusing animals, which is what Joe does. So I think we would change that. I mean, we wouldn't be known around the world, but that's okay.
Or you would demand complete production control.
Editorial control.
Yeah.
But that's probably any opportunity we can get to help an animal, we do. We still do it every day here. But to become involved with Tiger King, I probably wouldn't do it again.
That's a perfect place to wrap, and thank you all so very much.